Hello, we are here with
Igor.
yes, and we are gonna have an interview about his country he was born in, which is Croatia. Well, part of because I guess you were born when it was still Yugoslavia, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the first question is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background growing up in Croatia?
In Yugoslavia.
Oh, in Yugoslavia.
That was a few years ago. Well, Yugoslavia was a socialist country, so it wasn't as part of Eastern Bloc communist, so it wasn't that closed. We were pretty much free to travel wherever we want to, but it was half-closed economy, so there was not, the trade was not as free as in Europe, but I was lucky I was living close to Italy, so we traveled a lot there and some other places. So for me it was, well, it was maybe less. You had less to buy, but I don't think that people minded in that period. So this kind of lack of choice didn't impair any of our life or childhood experiences. So I think it was quite, and it was safe.
Oh.
So we could play. Parents were not really worried where we are. The main thing was when you hear the noon bell, come home for lunch, and then afternoon you went out until the first dark.
Oh.
So that was you had freedom to do whatever. No phones, no tracking, no anything.
Okay.
We could do all kinds of mischiefs without being spotted, or unless some neighbor saw us and pulled someone's ear.
Ah, yeah. And how does the lifestyle there compare to the ones in other countries?
Well, it was different systems, so I guess it's with. But generally, no. I think we have belong more to the European culture, let's say. So I don't think it was drastically different. I think, of course, the closest is Italy and Mediterranean mentality. Although Croatia is quite divided in the regions and languages and some. I'm learning Spanish from my English, but was customs.
Oh yeah. And I mean, was there like a big change in lifestyle of the whole Croatian community in the moment where Yugoslavia turned into the different countries that had Croatia?
Well, there was a war, therefore, so that
Okay.
definitely brings a huge difference. But what I noticed in other countries, I was working later on, who had this transitional change from one system to another, and usually from the West they first take the bad things. So, and those usually erode the good ones that you had previously. So I don't think it's always positive experience. And then the society actually, it disintegrates. Old values go, the new ones come. Of course, the flesh you want to see, the money, the things showing off comes first, and then slowly I think society needs to rebuild itself and find the way where they want to go. So.
And do you think that nowadays people are still being affected by that?
No, I don't think so. It's been like 30 something years. So I mean, yes, some of them, of course, the ones who maybe were directly involved in the war and so on, it's maybe left a stronger mark on their life. A lot of people lost some family of the loved ones. Of course, it's inevitable, it stays the trace, but the parts of Croatia they were not affected, and people who were not directly involved in war. No, I think it's now somebody who was born 10 years after the war now is 20 something years. It's.
And talking about education and the newer generations, nowadays, how is the education system like in Croatia?
It must remain mainly the same. We have 8 years of elementary school, 4-year high school, after which you're basically ready to work if you want, and or you have to go to study. It's usually 4 to 5 years,
Oh.
depends 6 if you're medicine. So.
And what are the main subjects or skills that are emphasized in schools?
Yeah, let's debate in Croatia because we have a still system that's oriented on wider knowledge, less focused and specific.
How come wider?
Well, we have like 12 to 14 subjects. You have everybody teaching, learning, language, history, nature, science, biology, chemistry. So it's a lot of subjects. So I think that if you want to have a specific knowledge, it's you need to do it later.
And when students get to the university, do they face any challenges like funding or maybe access to resources?
Well, now, officially, the education is free.
Oh, in all levels?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's great.
It's elementary is compulsory. I think maybe high school also now. While university is free of charge. But now they have quotas, so I guess if certain faculties have a number of students that they can study free of charge. Extra ones who maybe didn't get into it, they can do it with some participation. So plus now the private education started to open, so you have that option if you want to pay for it.
And once they finish their studies, how difficult or how easy it is to get a job?
Well, last few years after the COVID, actually after Croatia joined the European Union, a lot of people went to Europe. So actually we are now facing a lack of workforce and start importing from Asia mostly.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Indian, Filipino also, but Nepalese, Burmese.
And
most in construction.
Oh. So within Croatia, what are the main industries that drive the Croatian economy?
Tourism.
Tourism?
Tourism, I think, is close to 20% of GDP, which is a lot.
Oh.
But okay, now the industry. I mean, joining union was good because now we have 12 years, and it helped to develop the smaller companies. Unfortunately, we were very bad in preserving the companies from Yugoslavia time that were big ones. It was the companies where there were 10, 15, 20,000 people employed. Most of those are lost. There's 1 or 2 maybe remained out of 50. We had one of the largest shipping companies in the world at the end of the 80s, I think, among the top 5 in the world, so and they completely disintegrated. So there was a huge loss of work there in that period. So 90s and early 2000s were really bad. So a lot of people went to live abroad permanently, so that was first loss. Now, okay, now it's Europe, it's easier to come, but we'll see if the tide will turn back or not.
Yeah, and for the people that work in Croatia, how does the average salary compares to the everyday way of living, the cost of living?
But after COVID, nothing is same.
What
We
changed?
introduced euro first. The government says that it went perfectly without any. Every country in European Union who changed to euro faced a huge price increase, but we are supposed to be free of that, and everything is blamed on inflation. So.
Yeah, so
I think that a real salary in real terms are, of course, lagging behind the inflation. It's always there. So inflation is a form of tax, basically.
And there's like a huge inflation rate nowadays?
Not huge, but enough after almost 2 decades of minimum inflation. Now you have 4, 5, 6, 7%. It's not little.
Okay, and in work,
But now they are part of the union and part of the money. So basically, using euros, so there's nothing country can do.
yeah,
You don't have your own money currency, and also the policies are pretty much
yeah.
aligned with the Brussels. So it's what it is.
So you now use euros, right?
Yeah.
In Croatia. And for the people working, do they have like how is the general work culture? Like, is there like strong labor rights or job
Yeah.
security?
That's a legacy of the Yugoslavia. So it was like labor oriented, and everything was state owned, or everything was ours. So I would say that it is staying. I think that working conditions are by the law and not by, of course, always there are companies that are trying to reduce that and so on. But
Did you work in Croatia?
yeah.
For how many years?
Oh man. Well, even when I did, it was maybe mostly foreign companies. Actually, my experience in Croatian company, it's really minuscule.
Okay.
But every company needs to comply with the law. So
Okay. And speaking of the political landscape, so you told me that Croatia adopted what people were doing in Yugoslavia about work labor. How would you describe now the political landscape in Croatia?
now we are now in democracy.
It's a democracy.
Yeah.
And how does it compare to Yugoslavia?
Well, the time Yugoslavia, I was so young that I really didn't care about politics or anything else. So, I was awakened when the war broke out, and then you got a crash course on politics and why it happened, how it happened, and how it worked. So, but it's just like any Western democracy.
And do you have parties? Or
Yeah.
Yeah? And what are the main parties?
Well, there are the main two, center left and center left. So we are we fall into standard of Western democracy.
Yeah, you only have two parties,
No, we have more, but basically those two are.
like the categories.
Yeah, they run the show. But, it's some flashes of somebody else. So I think actually now there was one party that was kind of third, emerged as a third one. But with the games, they managed to neutralize her. So it's a game.
Yeah. And what are some of the main political issues that are being faced today?
I don't think nothing major. It's always like the same stuff. It's recycling, somebody, education, healthcare, better job, more job opportunities, better salaries. But technically looking, financial wise, we are better off than ever. Although not all of the people we feel that, of course.
Recycling, you said? Recycling.
Recycling of the same subjects that politicians debate about.
Okay. But, so they are all being discussed, but which ones do you think are the ones that affect people the most?
Well, the same ones, but every time somebody promises to change, or it'll be better, and then in the end it's what it is. And they're waiting for another 4 years to get them re-elected, or somebody else will point better on this pretty much the same subject.
Do people have...
Okay, now in Europe, the increasing topic is security, safety, because of the huge influx of refugees, or migrants actually more, because refugees are not so much.
And do people have faith in the different parties? Like,
Not really.
People are not quite political.
Well, you can always spark debate over trivial things. In certain countries, depend what Mexico probably has its own topics that can always be thrown, and everybody's talking 1 week about the same thing. So Croatia has as well, but the political system is seen as inefficient and blocked by its own narrative and fear of losing vote, because now for many years we have very tiny majority for 1 or 2 votes, so it's very, very, I mean, they're paying more attention to how to keep the majority than to actually make some proper work.
And has that affected maybe the national identity of citizens? Like, how strong is the sense of national identity?
I think it is because it derived from the war times, and okay, we can discuss about why and how, but definitely it is because it's still strong. I mean, the new generation was born after and had nothing to do with the war, but it's a small country.
Okay.
We do have in that sense.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions people that are not from Croatia have about Croatia?
I don't know.
You haven't heard any?
Not so many. I mean, I guess maybe Europe is part of the Eastern Europe. Okay, now things are now changing, but for the first more than 20 years or so, the old division in Western and Eastern Europe was upheld because it was several generations grew up in that environment. So it was always thing like, of course, there was Western propaganda in the West and Eastern on the East. So people lived under influence of this and kind of looked at the other people different way. But I think it's that different at the end. When you establish the same political system, you see that they're more or less all the subjects are the same everywhere.
And how do you think the other countries in the European Union see Croatia?
We are popular touristic destinations, so there's a lot of people are coming for the summer holidays, and Croatia has quite a few natural. I think we have several UNESCO parks and so on. So it's we're perceived mostly for our natural beauties, I would say. But for me, it's difficult to judge. I'm biased. So.
Yeah. And what are some other of the main places people tend to go when they visit Croatia?
Well, we have a lot of islands, the coast. The cities small are kind of Mediterranean, medieval Mediterranean. So it's classical Mediterranean style, and Plitvice Lakes, Dubrovnik as a city, and a few more.
And leaving the topic of inflation aside, do you think that Croatia joining the European Union was a good idea?
Economically wise, yes. What's happening in the last 2-3 years, especially with the Ukraine war and how it influenced the whole Europe, I don't think Europe in general is going in the right direction. So, of course, it reflects. If you're part of it, especially if you are a tiny piece of the European puzzle, there's not much you can do.
Okay. And also, right?
And if you can do something, you need the government and prime minister who actually cares about that.
And right now, who's in the you have a president, right?
Sorry?
You have a president since it's a democracy.
Yeah, we have president, but prime minister is the government is the one who is running the show. President is after the first president died, who had it was semi-presidential system. Then those powers were stripped later. So president is more protocolar, and plus the president remained the commander-in-chief. So he's like military is run by the government and Ministry of Defense, but in war times the president is definitely the commander-in-chief.
And right now it is center right or center left?
Right, center right.
And about the future outlook, how do young Croatians, the newer generations, feel about their future?
Well, we tend to be sometimes moderately pessimistic, so they will complain.
Yeah. Do many people plan to stay in the country or move over?
Well, I think when you're young, it's natural you want to move somewhere, and it's just okay to do so, because only after you've been exposed to something else, you can maybe better judge how things are there and see pluses and minuses.
But most people work within the country, or
Yeah.
they move? Yeah.
I mean, if you live there, most of people work there.
Oh.
Maybe some are living close to the borders, but to be honest, there are not so many, except maybe Italy or Austria, which we don't have direct borders, but very close. No, you don't have other countries that are more developed, so it's usually they come to work in Croatia.
Oh, okay. And what are the main jobs people tend to look for?
But they'll tend to look in tourism, because tourism is a business which is very labor intensive, but you can't have paid, all the cleanings and everything, maintenance, paid standard or better standard salaries, because it will make huge burden financial. So those kind of jobs tend to be filled with cheaper labor from abroad.
And what do you think needs to change for Croatia to progress more socially and economically?
We need politicians who know what to do and be more like a businessman. Try to actually do something, not just talk.
Yeah. Did you vote on the last elections?
Sorry?
Did you vote on the last elections?
Last were presidential elections. Yeah, I was home for the first round, but not for second.
No. How many years do presidents have?
President's 5 and government is 4.
4. And they can re-elect themselves?
President twice, and government there is no limit, because it's a general election. So whichever party has a majority, they can form the government. If they choose the same person to be prime minister, there is no limit to that.
And in the people in charge of making laws, do you think they are fair? Do you think the law system is good?
No system is good, only it's not always implemented to the true letter of the law. So I think implementation is bigger problem than that's one of the things that remained from ex-country, because when you have monoparty system, the judicial system is basically under control of the ruling party, so it wasn't independent. Of course, not if you break traffic or something law, that's not to that level, but in major cases when somebody of importance might get hurt, then of course intervention will be made. So we do still have these remains of that system in part of justice.
Okay, so speaking of the industries there, you say the main one is tourism. Are there a lot of regulations for people who enter the country?
Like tourists?
Yeah.
No. For EU citizens, no, because there are no borders.
No borders?
No.
So I know there's the Schengen
space,
and Croatia is part of
it.
Yeah, so people can.
So we are basically the outside border of European Union,
Oh,
which is difficult because we have very odd shape and huge land border.
and are there any main products that are produced in Croatia?
Products.
Yes.
Well, we have some food industry. I mean, they are now, of course, there are a lot of companies that are bought from others. I know there is a glass industry. There is, we have eastern part of Croatia is pretty flat. It's kind of fertile land, so we do have wine production. So agriculture is strong, although it's kind of neglected from the state. So, or it's not technically it's not neglected because state gives. Like substitutions, but they are given more on administrative way instead of focusing on what really is needed. If those subsidies are actually directed to where it's needed and most profitable, and
Okay. And so the main exports of Croatia are, you said, glass?
no glass. I know there are several. For example, there was I know there is a factory or two that have. That are bought and used by prominent car manufacturers, but it's not the main one. That's not just the one I know. Some of the factories, companies open the factories in Croatia because they found something else, but also it's not unflexibility of the government is, I guess, preventing maybe some more to come.
What do you think?
And we are very fragmented administratively. We have about close to 500 councils, which is crazy for a country of less than 4 million people.
And why do you think the government is preventing other companies?
Not preventing, just not interesting enough to actually, because administration, like administrative thinking is, you sit in the office and you care about anything, something, the paper comes to you, and it doesn't comply with some crazy insignificant requirement, you sort of say no, we don't care about it.
How do you think is like how do you think people in Croatia tend to negotiate? Are they like pretty open to change, or maybe because of what has happened in the past from Yugoslavia and the war, do you think people are like closed to change, like they fear?
Well, yeah, I think that society in general went a little bit one step towards more conservative. Whether we once were, especially the western part of Yugoslavia, was much more advanced and progressive. Now, it being smaller, I think your view shrinks as well as the country. So, in general, there is, I would say, a trend of little being more conservative than before. Luckily, nothing dramatically, but yeah.
And the society, like people living there, are they like? Is there like a big sense of community, or like the people?
Yeah, I think it's a problem of the West. It just reflects also on Croatia as well, being a part of it. So this kind of alienation is stronger than it was before, definitely. I mean, I when I was a kid, I remember the house door was wide open the whole day. Nowadays, you barely know if you live in an apartment building, you barely know the people who live with you. So that's definitely big change. Still, there is maybe the family links are still remain more or less intact as they were before. We are more family oriented, so wider family is always more connected, but you do feel that difference. I can see the difference.
Yeah. And talking about families, how many kids do families tend to have?
Less and less.
Less and less?
We have negative trends. We're declining more people are dying than they're born.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, if you listen to demographic experts, it's all variety of reasons, but I'm not really sure. I think it's also a little bit of sense of security, and I think the government needs to more to form. I don't think it's anymore a matter of finance as it was before. Lifestyle. You tend to work longer, less time, more career focused, but it's just Western general issues with it. It's pretty much the same.
And so you would say it's because people are more focused on working.
Yeah,
Yeah. And are they like
maybe more conformist or more oriented to your own comfort.
oh, and are there high standards when it comes to working? Like, do the bosses of each company expect a lot from?
Well, it depends on the company. It actually depends. It's rarely company culture. I mean, you have companies with role culture, but I think it's usually the immediate boss who can make a difference.
Would you say people live to work or work to live?
No, we still work to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many?
In general, yes.
How many hours do people work
8 hours.
a day?
Yeah.
And
So 40 hours a week.
yeah, like in
But-
most countries, right?
Yeah, but in these 8 hours you have half an hour break already included,
Oh,
so you effectively do 7.5.
yeah. And so in which city were you born there?
Rijeka.
Hmm?
Rijeka.
And is the city still existing today?
Yeah.
And what do people tend to do once they are not working? Like, what most people do to like have some
Socialize.
yes, some recreation time?
If you go on the main pedestrian street, you can see the cafes are full all day.
All day.
Yeah. So we like to socialize with our friends and talk.
Yeah, and speaking about the people and the culture, what are some of the main traditions that are there in Croatia? Do you have like specific holidays that are not in other countries?
No.
No? Or some traditions?
No, we are too close to Vatican, and we are basically mostly Roman Catholics. So all these things are pretty much tied with either with the creation, or you have the dates and holidays that are tied to the creation of the state, the Croatia, or the religion. So
Oh,
not really much.
so
So we have carnivals, for example. That's the carnival is in the same time, but it's winter there, so it's the masks are different because it's cold.
oh. And so most people are, I guess, are Catholics because they are next to the Vatican.
Yeah, I mean, historically looking, we've always been part of.
And are most people religious?
To a certain point, most of them declaratively, lots not so active.
Yeah. So I know worldwide people are becoming less and less religious.
I would say the same trend is there. I think just out of I don't know. Also the influence of politics a little bit, because politics does use the religion, in especially the right parties who are on the right spectrum, using the religion a little bit as their to help in their political goals. But so some people are declaring themselves as religious just to be
aligned.
in a proper box, yes. But I suspect there is less actual people who believe than Those they were not declared.
And what are some things that you love most about Croatia? If there's any.
No, well, I have my family. I'm actually where I live. We have my family days back a long time ago, so it's kind of you just belong there. It's difficult to say what I love. It just that's mine, and I feel perfectly at ease there. So.
And what are some things that you do not like?
I don't like bad people. You can find them everywhere. So.
But when you say bad people, you refer to the politicians, or maybe they're like there's
Everywhere there is people who are not, honest or
is there a
not
lot
thinking, selfish and so on.
is there a lot of criminal activity?
No.
No, it's pretty safe.
I think we chart among top 5 or 6 countries in the world as safe to us. So.
Oh, that's
You
it.
can walk any time of day or night without any fear, to be honest. Of course, you can always find some idiot who wants to pick a fight.
And
That's more exception than the rule.
why do you think that is? That it's pretty safe.
I don't know.
Are there like a lot of policemen in the streets?
Not really.
No.
No, and lately we have issue because there's not enough police force. So.
And for the things that you do not like, is there something that you would personally want to change in the country?
I mean, I would like to change, but it's like wishing that a certain part of population changes how they're born, so it's impossible.
And and in what other countries have you lived, or been, or worked?
Well, being in more than I lived. I live more in 1, 2. Actually, this is my 3rd country.
Yeah. Which ones are the others?
Azerbaijan, United Arab Emirates, okay, no, 4th. Saudi Arabia and now Mexico.
Oh. And which one do you like the most, in general?
Well, the Mexico I've lived the least, so I cannot say. Plus, I realized that Mexico is okay. I knew it's big, but when you come to Mexico, you realize that it's really a big country. If you like, I think it's pretty much a big chunk of Europe it covers from. In what we have in Europe, so many different countries. It's just one country here. Okay, I know you have federal states, but it's more kind of. I would say it's more unified than in Europe it is. Well, historically looking, also it has its reasons. But what was the question?
But you had to move to the
Which
other
one I like the
countries.
better? So the Mexico I lived the least, so I cannot say that. But each country has something to do. I mean, okay, the Saudi where I was there, it nowadays is much different than it was. For us, I mean, from Western perspective, at that time Saudi was pretty boring. There was no cinemas, there was no concerts, there was nothing. You had just the shopping malls, restaurants, and that's it. So it was pretty dull to live there.
The reason you moved was because of work?
Yeah.
Do you think that you could have made a good living had you stayed in Croatia instead of moving to other countries for work?
Now, yes. At the beginning, no.
Why not?
Because now we are much more economically developed.
So back then, when you were younger and you were starting to search for job,
Yeah.
what were the main ones you could get?
Well, we had pretty much everything, but it was just the companies were smaller. The amount of work there was more people available to work than the work itself. So of course, it creates the surplus and difficulty to find something. So okay, I was pretty lucky. I was never that that I was unemployed for any longer period. But yeah, and I was younger, so when the opportunity came, and I started working, and then they said, okay, we need somebody abroad, so why not?
And
maybe I had this little bit of adventurous spirit.
yeah, but when you go back to Croatia, what do you do? I mean, you have your family there, right?
Yeah.
And do you personally tend to go maybe to the touristic places, or do you just like staying home?
Well, if you live abroad or work abroad, then you come home, you just don't be home, because
Yeah.
when there was a longer period that I worked and lived in Croatia, I, of course, visiting some place. Not enough, to be honest, because it turns out that I know more abroad than I in Croatia, so kind of trying to change with my kids, so they tend to travel in Croatia. Not exclusively, of course, but on a shorter, maybe like longer weekend or something to visit. Because basically where I live, to the both parts of Croatia, we have about 5-6 hours, so it equally away. They're equally part the borders, so kind of trying to explore a little bit there.
Do you live more to the north or to the south?
More to the north.
And which country is the nearest?
The nearest is Slovenia.
Slovenia. You've been there?
Of course, we need to cross. Well, it was part of Yugoslavia once, so we were the same country. But yeah, now I have to cross Slovenia to go to Italy. But first, the Italian border is less than 1 hour drive from my house.
Oh, from your house?
Yeah.
Less than 1 hour to go to Italy.
Yeah.
Oh. And the neighboring countries.
Slovenia has very strict police, so it takes me about 15 minutes more than once in Yugoslavia when things were much relaxed, so I could squeeze that.
And the neighboring countries, do they all have good relationships with Croatia?
I think yes, but for example, the relation with Serbia, which we were in war, are influenced with the war itself, but mostly with politicians who use that subject always whenever they have issues home. They start some row, and press in both countries is writing nothing else but that. So you throw the bomb and then they jump on it, and you hide the actual problem that you didn't want nobody to see.
And which countries are the main Croatian allies? Like, with the countries that have the most trade maybe with Croatia?
It's not that simple, because with the changing political environment and dynamics in each country, so I think we have pretty good relations with Slovenia, and lately maybe Montenegro, because the ones who are bordering, because the political situation. In Serbia, I have a huge protest now for like a month or so. The government just don't want to step down, so that might be an issue. And Bosnia is still unresolved. The deal they strike in when there was a war was, I think at that time it was pretty clear that there won't be a lasting. This was basically a long-term temporary solution, and it'll sooner or later come again to be so, because actual situation is not good.
So
solution was kind of practical at the moment, but I guess they thought let somebody else in the future deal with the consequences.
So I'm guessing that.
But also, excuse me, the Balkan Peninsula was throughout the history always hugely interesting area of geopolitical forces and interests. So nothing changed basically. We thought after the Second World War that things are finally calmed down, but no. We are all still too human to learn from history and try to apply it in the future. So.
Yeah.
this is becoming again an area that can be dangerous as a result of geopolitical interests.
So I'm assuming that nowadays there are not a lot of people that are moving to Croatia, right?
I mean, from foreign workers from abroad, yeah. So lately,
Right.
now I think we have well over 100,000 foreign employees, and it happened in like 3-4 years.
But they move for work. Oh. And what would you recommend?
I mean, of course, we're interested now as a part of the European Union. Definitely, if you can get in one country, if your goal is to get in Union, you'll find a country that's the easiest, or where there's opportunity to come in and then try to work your way to wherever you want to go.
Do you think it's easier for people to go to Croatia and have a living there than other countries from the European Union?
I don't know. I think we now have about, if you want to become a citizen, you need to live about 8 years minimum.
Oh, 8 years.
So it's not that easy.
And what would you recommend to a person that is going to Croatia for work?
And some Croatian at least.
Hmm?
At least put an effort so people will be more open. But it's this is the huge change because of country that was like ethnically pretty unified and pure, let's say. Now you have a huge influx of foreign labor that is not from neighboring countries which do share common, at least to a certain extent, or mostly share the same, especially those who were part of Yugoslavia. So we do share, mentality, and most of those countries speak the language that is almost the same or similar. Now I have people with completely different background, region, way of thinking, upbringing, and in such a huge number, over the very short period, that it becomes an issue now. You can start feeling resistance, which was to be expected, and it's completely government's fault because like up to 5 years ago, they were issuing 3,000-5,000 permits for foreign workers a year. After they decided, everybody opened agencies, and now they're calling you, we have foreign workers, come on, it's easy, it's cheap, they work. So they're pushing from companies, of course. So this is completely a failure of politics.
And
complete mismanagement of situation.
has the politics ever since Croatia started being an independent country always been like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you see general trend in the world that politicians are more and more self-oriented. So that first period, the Second World War, especially in Europe, which was the battlefield of the Second World War, you had the long period of the feeling of unity and wish for peace and kind of wanted to do good for the society. Now I think this was eroded almost completely. I think that personal interest and selfishness is definitely dominant now.
And when do you think was Croatia's prime, like the best they have been? Or do you think they are, like, nowadays they are still?
Economically wise is now. Social, difficult to say. I didn't live in the past century, so.
Yeah.
I don't know, think that the material wealth is not necessarily linked with the feeling of well-being.
And
as it's been proved now, so economically we never were better off, but I don't see that people are that much happier.
do you have because I know in some countries they have high suicide rates because of that, because of people not having maybe good self-esteem?
No, I tell you, I think that still the social networking is strong, and we are small enough, except for maybe capital, which is about over 800,000 people. The rest are smaller cities, so you still have your circle of friends. You still have a lot of people you know, whether you want it or not because you just born in the same place. It's a small one, so you tend to know more. And don't think you have this feeling of emptiness or uselessness or not belonging, which you can see in major cities and big countries, not that much. So, especially the ones who are so frequently where people change the place they live because of the work.
Okay.
So we do have, I would say that we still have roots, local roots, and okay. Sometimes you don't like where you're born and you want to change, it's fine. But still we do have this kind of social support, not that it's active or intended, but it's just the way you live and you have your circle of friends, wider, smaller, and you hang out, and I don't think it's so. That's what I've said, that the Mediterranean style of living, the communities are more still, as I tell you, we are losing it, but it's still at the level that prevents maybe the high suicide rates and this alienation, total alienation of people. Of course, individuals, we have individuals who are, but there might be clinical diagnosis. If someone has depression, it's nothing to do with that.
Yes. And when you say that people still have roots and that there are small communities, small cities.
Yeah, well, compared to Mexico, we are just nothing.
But when you talk about roots, do you mean like, what do you mean by roots? Like traditions?
No, well, I mean the place we are born and you know a lot of people, you just kind of. I realized that when I lived in Dubai, it's a city of 2 million people, and you're looking all these skyscrapers, all the lights, so many people going out, but at the end you can feel completely and utterly lonely there.
Yeah.
Because there's no this network. You have some people who are calling friends, but these are not real friends. These are people who are now you hang out with, and in the next 6 months one can go work somewhere else in the world. Somebody new came. These are no strong bonds.
Yeah, and for
While I know, okay, you don't see older people all the time, but if from my high school time or my elementary school, I can say that with more or less frequency, I see them maybe 2/3, even more.
And for example, you seem very reserved, very serious. Do you think that?
Oh, I can be. You interview me.
Yeah, but I mean in general, like you are quite serious. Even you're funny.
I make jokes.
Huh?
I do make jokes. Come on.
Yeah. I was gonna say you make jokes, but still, most of the time, you are.
I have a lot of work.
Yes, but are you like that outside of work?
I never give it a thought, but I would like to think not.
Yeah. So do you think you are the same here and that in Croatia?
I don't know. I think I'm just myself, but when you have a lot of work, of course you're in the office, not the...
Yeah, but do most people in Croatia are serious, or maybe they are more extroverted?
And it's just individual, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are some countries, like mostly Asian countries, like in Japan or in Korea, where the job is very demanding.
Mm-hmm.
So people tend to only focus on work.
Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah. We are not even close to that.
Well, is there anything else you would like to highlight?
Actually, some foreigners who came to Croatia to live, firstly they extended quality of life. I mean, like work and live. The family and security are the top three reasons they tend to live in Croatia.
And is there
I
anything?
mean, from perspective in Mexico, although Carmen is rather a safe city.
Um,
I mean, looking just at the news, not every day. I've seen enough kill people than in Croatia since the war, since after the war. So.
And is there anything that you would highlight from Croatia? Maybe some fun fact or something that Croatia has that no other country does.
But the legends say, we like to say that we invented the tie.
Yeah. You who?
Croatians.
Some Croatian, but that.
Yeah.
And
The legend said that then during Napoleon time, the soldiers who went to war from Croatia, that their wives or girlfriends or mothers used to tie them a scarf around the neck. And when French saw that, they liked it, and since we were Croat, say Kravat,
oh,
that's the legend. So
and what else?
plus the fountain pen,
Oh.
Mr. Penkala who invented it, and torpedo. Although it killed so many people, but it was made in Rijeka.
Oh.
There you have still the station, original testing station where they produced it.
And what else has Croatia given to the world?
Oh well, that's a three, I think, on top of my head, but
Maybe food?
well, I don't think we have anything specifically food, because that's the peninsula was everybody, whoever want to go to the Middle East or further, has to pass through there. Plus, there was a large part of it under Ottoman Empire for half a millennium. So we're just a mix of a lot of things.
But do you have Croatian dishes?
Yeah, but you can trace. Their influence in Mediterranean. Of course, Mediterranean. You had the fish, then the bread, pasta. It's similar like Italian, which is more branded. So it's difficult to find saying where it came, because a large part of Croatian coast was under Venice a lot of times. So because the last Croatian king was like 1,000 years after that, we were always part of some other kingdom. So it was a small miracle that we actually managed to preserve the identity throughout all these years. But being part of something, it kind of robs you of opportunity to say that's mine, because through all the years it's difficult to pinpoint that's ours. So I have a lot of influences from East, Middle East, Turkey, and continental Europe, Mediterranean. But it does provide a variety of food and dishes that are really, you have a lot of them.
Yeah.
And some combinations that are maybe locally made because you had both.
So taking into account all of the things that we've talked about, from the culture, from the places to go, from the non-existing traditions to the work environment, would you call yourself a proud Croatian?
I am from where I am. I cannot change it. So I mean, yes, I like my country. So
Yeah.
I can't say no. And then again, that's really biased. Like you ask if do you like being yourself, and do you have any alternative?
I mean, you. But what I mean by the question is that, of course, you were born there and you cannot change that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, overall, yes, I think it's a good place to live. Would I change something? I would change a lot of things, but it's always like, but you tend to defend yours against her, but you want to keep the right to criticize what's wrong because you are part of that society.
And if you were to come back to Croatia, which you will,
Yeah, eventually.
if you had to work there and not abroad like you're doing right now. Like, what life would you like to be living there? Because you said that when you started working, there were not a lot of, well, the economy wasn't as progressed as
Yeah, no,
it
of
is
course.
now. So you had to start your career with the landscape back then.
Yeah.
So nowadays, with the economy of today and the society of today, if you had to start your career again in Croatia, what do you think you would be doing there?
Oh, come on, we are in the midst of the another revolution like AI and so on. So I guess it's difficult to say what we'll be doing, because I guess nowadays, today you can start your school, and by the time you finish, there are lots of jobs that didn't exist when you start your school, and some of them don't exist anymore. So
Which ones do not exist anymore?
I don't know by heart now, but they're just saying that the change, the velocity of change of working. I don't think when you work like here every day from day to day, but if you just a little bit follow the development, I think it's gonna be huge changes there.
Okay, well, I think that's all topics I wanted to cover. So I think I'm done. Thank you so much for agreeing to make this interview happen.
You're very persuasive.
Yes. Don't say that. No, I'm gonna have to.
No, that's a nice word.
Yes. I'm gonna
There are
have
some worse one, but I won't use them.
Yeah. Okay. So, anything you would like to add before we finish?
No.
Something to the public.
Hasta luego. Estoy aprendiendo español.
Yes. Yeah.
Arturo me ayuda.
Sí.
Su inglés es muy bien.
Bueno.
Es fácil porque me puede explicar the nuances of some things in Spanish.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for agreeing. And yes, I'm persuasive, but
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah, for you it's good.
Well,
For me it's not so bad.
well, thank you. And
Welcome.
I think that's it.